Welcome to the Education Marketing Leader podcast with Chris Rapozo. If you're looking to dive into the latest industry insights, draw inspiration from education success stories, or just want to sharpen your marketing skills, you're in the right place. Here, we bring you a diverse range of voices from experts and leaders in the field, offering you a unique blend of professional development and practical strategies. Whether you want to understand your audience better, stay updated with the latest tech trends in marketing, or expand your professional network, we've got you covered. So while you're driving on your morning commute or winding down after a busy day, let's explore the dynamic world of education marketing together.
Hey, Jay.
Here he is.
How's it going?
Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here. How's everybody?
So you know Brian, right, Jay?
I do, unfortunately.
All right. So, hey, just a disclosure, I had a lot of people sign up. Everybody said, hey, I got something else going on. So Jonathan and Brian can vouch for me that I do actually have a book club, and that just got you on here, for my
one man book club. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
I know. I was like, what am I going to do? But yeah, great book, Youtility. So, Bart Kaler from the Higher Ed Marketers. So that's how I learned about you, because you were on his podcast, and I remember him talking about Youtility highly. So when it came to choosing another book, I was like, well, Bart likes Youtility, so I should probably look into it. And I really liked it, even though, it's been over a decade, but there's still super good information in there. So usually we do a big introduction and, get everybody introduced and that sort of thing. But I felt like this time we're just going to go around, share what our main takeaways were, and then have a couple of questions for you, kind of like podcast style, maybe cut it short a little bit, less than an hour. My name is Chris Rapozo. I have a podcast, The Education Marketing Leader. I work primarily with higher education institutions. I work currently at a marketing agency. So what I do is I started this book club about a year and a half ago, just to build connection, build community, and get people together that are like-minded to help each other out. Like kind of like what you say in the book here, offer something helpful. People don't always take me up on that, but I'm always there offering the book. We go through the book, and sometimes, it's hit or miss, but we're here and stay on top of mind. And I really liked your part about the top of mind awareness, because that's what I always preach, but it goes beyond top of mind awareness when it comes to marketing. So I really found it super insightful. I know that, I did a little bit of research on you. You're a marketing expert, customer experience expert, author of seven best-selling books. I did not know that you had 7 books. Founder of 5 companies and the world's #2 tequila influencer. Can you tell us a little bit more about your tequila venture and how that came about?
I'm from Arizona originally, and when I was in my 20s, before we had kids, I used to go every Wednesday to a bar in Scottsdale, still there, with my best friend, and there's a bartender there who was really into agave spirits. Again, this is decades ago, long before it was popularized in the U.S. But we'd go on Wednesday and just sit at the bar and be like, okay, church starts now, right? And he'd pull some crazy dusty bottle off the back of the shelf, be like, this one came from this lady in Oaxaca, and they have no electricity, and just really got enchanted with the narrative and the story and how agave spirits are made, and obviously the wide variety of flavors. And so I was always interested in it, and started to buy more and then visit different distilleries in Mexico, etc. But it was just a hobby, the same way people are bourbon nerds or whatever in Kentucky, as Jonathan. And then when I sold my marketing agency, Convince to Convert, about 5 years ago, I used to record a podcast called Social Pros, and I did it every week for 10 years. And so I stopped recording the show, and I had a little bit of extra time. And I said, maybe it would be interesting to just try and teach people some of the things I've learned about tequila. And I've done a lot of long form content, longer podcasts, obviously books and blog posts and newsletters and webinars and speaking, but I'd never really done much in terms of like the short form snackable content. So I thought, well, I could A, teach people about tequila, and B, sort of learn how Instagram and TikTok works, right? Just mechanically, as a content creator. So made a few videos, and they were terrible, just not great at all. But then I encouraged my at that point, team member, now business partner, Maddie Jager, to join me on camera. I said, would you like to make one video? He said, sure. And 500 videos later, we ended up as the second most popular tequila content creators on the planet. And then in January of this year, we actually stopped making videos And now we own the Tequila Report, tequilareport.com, which is essentially the wine spectator for the tequila business. So we've got a very robust website, a twice weekly newsletter, which goes to 62,000 subscribers now. We have a mastermind of tequila brands. We have a conference. We have a tours business. We have a merchandise business. So it's literally a whole company. So much so that breaking news, and even Brian Piper doesn't know this, 2 weeks ago, I quit my job and resigned as a keynote speaker. So I did 950 keynotes.
Wow.
And now I am done. And so all I'm doing now is tequila.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Not a very good economic decision, but it's a great lifestyle decision. I mean, after doing 48 weeks of travel a year for 22 years in a row, other than a small COVID break, I'm ready to have one full-time job instead of two.
Hey, there you go. That's awesome. Brian Piper, you want to go ahead and share a little bit more about your involvement with Jay, how you know him, and maybe some of the key takeaways that you got from the book?
Yeah, so I've been in Jay's circle for years and connected with him in person at Content Marketing World. But the first content marketing book I read was Joe's first edition of Epic Content Marketing, and like blew my mind. You can just like give away your information to people and build trust, and like that's a sales cycle. And then the next book I read was Youtility. And when you're 2013, I think you wrote that, right? And so I reread it a couple of weeks ago and was like, it all still applies. Like it all still is. And you know,
arguably it applies more now. And that's the part that's the part that's like so frustrating as an author. If I wasn't sort of trying to get out of being a business thought leader and speaker and an author, I would probably rewrite it like and republish it now, because same thing with Hug Your Haters, right? Especially now how much the tone and tenor of human discourse has gone into the dumper. That whole idea of sort of love thy enemy and et cetera is even more relevant than when I wrote it. So I feel like a little bit I'm cursed in that every book I write, I ended up writing it like 8 years before it should have been written. But you know, what are you going to do?
Well, and it was funny because I reread it, and the same thing happened to me as I reread it, because when I first read both of these books was before I got into higher ed. And then I spent, 8 years in higher ed, and that's when I was like helping Joe write the second edition of Epic. I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what higher ed needs. And no one in higher ed is like doing this well, or very few institutions are actually doing this well. There are a few. And then when I reread this book a couple of weeks ago, I was like, it's the same thing. It's like, why does higher ed not see the opportunities? And we are probably a more ideal institution or organization to be able to leverage these opportunities, because we have like lifelong learning opportunities, and we have people who are committing like 4 years or more to our institution, and we just don't provide them all the ideas and information and knowledge that they need. So
I don't know if we ever talked about this, but when I sold Convince and Convert, I briefly considered, and I ended up just doing speaking, but I briefly considered starting another agency that was just going to do college tours, right? And make them better, because you're talking about in some cases the price of a house. And I think we all know how impactful that walk around tour can be. Now, obviously in the age of the Common App, some kids are just hit and go, and like whatever happens, right? But most of the times before someone matriculates, they're going to try and set feet on campus. And having had 2 kids go through that process, it was remarkable to me as a marketer how good some of those tours are, but how terrible most of them are. And where they fall down is both in utility, like, okay, why don't you just tell me the things that I actually need to know that would be useful? And then also complete and utter inattention paid to any kind of word of mouth generation. And so I thought about, I know there are a couple of small firms that do some college tour consulting, but I thought, boy, I could really make a difference in this specific thing, but decided not to. Maybe someday. Well, I actually have an example of that. As a matter of fact, it was long after I wrote the book, but I think we made a blog post about it or something. It was when my daughter was going to college tours. And now I'm going to bastardize it, which I feel bad about, but I think it was Creighton. No, it was Xavier in Cincinnati. So when we went on the Xavier tour, they actually handed out like a spiral notebook with a comparison chart, right? It was already pre-filled out. So size of campus, dorms, meal plan, parking, blah, 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 all the kind of things that you might think about, academic reputation, student-teacher ratio, blah, 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 blah. And then they had all of Xavier's sort of facts about those already filled out for you. So they literally gave you the comparison chart that you could then bring with you to other schools as you're on other tours. But, it was Xavier's branded, here's the chart you should use, which I thought was really, really smart. And it just like such a small thing, but so useful. Like, what do people need to do? Well, they need to compare schools based on like criteria. Now, we all know that at the end of the day, a lot of kids make decisions based on vibes, but the parents at least want to have actual things written down in a spreadsheet in many cases. And they're like, here it is for you, which I thought was so smart.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Quick break to tell you about my new book that I co-authored with Rob Clark called The Attention Gap: Why Great Schools Stay Invisible and How to Fix It. We wrote it for higher ed marketers, enrollment leaders, and anyone trying to reach students in today's noisy, scroll-happy world. It's built from 130 plus episodes and conversations with higher ed leaders from this show, plus Rob's experience growing that tall family to over 4 billion views online. We unpack why the old marketing playbook isn't working any longer and what you can do about it instead to fix that. If your team is serious about closing the gap between great programs and real visibility online, this book is for you. Grab your copy of The Attention Gap today on Amazon. And now, back to the episode.
I like that idea of like a comparison chart. I'm probably going to walk to our enrollment management folks and say, hey, I just heard, so why don't we do this? Seriously, I might do that just right off the call. Yeah. It's probably more like hospitable or hospitality for me. Like, there's a sign outside of our building on campus that has a map on it, and it's kind of a trap because when people come to campus, first of all, NKU is not exactly the easiest campus to navigate if you've never been here before, and I guess that's like any other college campus, but I make it a point to, like, if I meet someone who has that lost look on their face or their on their phone, like, where am I going, I'll walk with them to the next building to chat with them and engage them. Hey, what's your name? What high school did you go to? Here in Cincinnati, we don't ask where you're from. We ask what high school did you go to, because that tells you way more information than where you're from. Anyway, so I'll walk with them on to where they need to go and try to be more hospitable. As it pertains to my role, I'm just trying to cross sell and upsell and come back in 3 years and get your MBA or get your Master of Business Leadership and Innovation degree here at NKU's Hill College of Business. So yeah, that's about it for like a top of mind kind of thing.
Yeah, and the way I would think about that is, whether they've expressed interest in an MBA or not, how could you provide useful resources to undergrads or even grads that are drawn from the School of Business, which then showcases that as an opportunity, right? So how can you do, how could you do a book club for graduates that talk about business books, even if you're not a business major, that kind of thing? Could you do a series of free webinars? Could you do a podcast, right, where you do kind of, I listen to a lot of Freakonomics and those kind of shows and Planet Money. Like, could you do a College of Business, business trends for real people, 10-minute a week podcast, right? And all you're doing is just giving people free stuff that they can use. And the whole premise of the book, the whole premise of Youtility is that if you just put enough chum in the water, eventually people will take the bait. The reason a lot of people don't do it, though, is not everybody's going to take the bait, right? And so a lot of executives don't get it because they're like, well, wait, we're going to give away a bunch of free shit. And what you're telling me is like 10% of the people are going to take us up on it, and 90% are just going to take their free stuff and we don't get anything back. It's like, yeah, that's called CAC, right? That's called customer acquisition costs. You just don't see it that way because it's not a Google ad or something that you can actually look at ROAS or some kind of formula, but it's the same formula, right? If you put an ad out there, only a few percent of people are going to click on it and fewer yet are going to convert. But for some reason, when people think about doing that with content or resources, it like freaks out their brain. They don't understand that not everybody is a buyer. And I think I said in the book, like the key word, the key understanding for the utility principle is the power of eventually. Right? You have to understand that some people are going to take you up on it at some point when it is right for them. And you can't dictate that, right? You've got to, that's why the top of mind awareness part is so crucial, right? If you keep on their radar because you're helping them, when the time is right, they will pay you back. But you can't dictate that. If you're going to do like executive MBA program or something like that, like my daughter's an MBA program right now in Paris for hospitality, but she worked as a professional marketer. She used to intern for me. She worked as a marketer for 3 years and then went back to school. Well, you don't know when the time is right. You just got to be out there so that when the time is right, they connect the dots. That sustained level of usefulness is what gets you. Because what you don't want is they haven't heard from you in 3 years, and then they want an MBA, and the first thing they do is they Google it or they ask ChatGPT, because then then you have no natural advantage.
So as you were talking, I was reminded that my latest project was really simple. We're trying to raise enrollment of the Master of Business Leadership and Innovation program. It's a really select cohort-based program. Many of you guys might be good candidates for, shameless plug. So I created a playbook, like a ebook white paper kind of thing. And so far, for lead generation and things like that. And so far it's been pretty successful within the week. I don't know if that's necessarily utility, but it's content marketing by providing value.
Absolutely.
I guess utility for me, I still think of the taxi cab driver that has a list of menus of restaurants that he or they, I guess this was a story in utility maybe, that taxi cab driver would give you a list of preferred restaurants or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Taxi Mike. Yep.
yeah. So when Taxi Mike as a passenger is like, oh well, I'm gonna remember Mike because he provided me value to make a better decision on where to eat.
Yep, absolutely. That's just it, right? And it's funny because you see more and more businesses. I mean, when I wrote the book, nobody even talked about content marketing. I'm not even sure. I mean, it was at the very, I think maybe Joe had coined the term at that point, but just barely, right? I think it's 2012 was when he came out with it. So, that wasn't this whole idea of like using content and useful things as a marketing strategy was like crazy talk. It's kind of hilarious now because here we are 15 years later. It's like, well, of course you would have a content strategy, but back then nobody even knew what those words meant. So it's funny to revisit that book because so much of it has turned out to be axiomatic, which is really gratifying, I guess, as an author. But yet, even now, when people understand it as an approach, they don't necessarily do it, right? That's the part that's when I used to I'd come off stage and people would say, "Man, I love that speech," and you really got me thinking. But a lot of the things you said, Jay, are pretty much common sense. I'm like, exactly. And the reason I keep talking about them is because you're not actually doing them. Right?
Yeah, I love the Taxi Mike example. I also like what you said that if they're where's Taxi Mike and in what city is he?
Gosh, I gotta remember now.
Somewhere I don't remember where it was, but anyways, let's say he
Well,
was.
I actually met Taxi Mike and actually took pictures with him, but I can't remember where it was. That tells you how much I travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, he last time I saw him, he was still doing it.
Nice. So, because you said, let's say he's in Cleveland. It said in Cleveland it's gold, but if you're in the next town, it's recycling, right? So there's also
Yeah.
it was like one of those aha moments. It's like, yeah, at the moment when you have it, when you need it, you got to be there. Same with the Hilton Suggest story that you talked about, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
being helpful. I was like, nowadays it would be me going into Reddit and answering questions of people, even if they don't need me. But eventually, when they're thinking about a
Yeah.
marketing agency, I may be top of mind, or the Sit and Squad app from
Oh
Charmin.
man,
Oh my gosh.
that's too bad that's gone because that was a genius one. I used that one a lot
Yeah.
back in the day when we had kids in youth sports. Uh,
Yeah.
that was a brilliant one. Yeah, I mean, what's the Hilton Suggest one is really interesting. We ended up working on that program after we wrote the book, but what I like about that idea, right, where the brand is just monitoring for questions
Hmm.
and just pointing out opportunities. It's not like, hey, and come to the Hilton,
Right.
for a free cinnamon roll. If they happen to be a good recommendation, they'll mention it. They're not dumb, but they're not using it as a way to sell stuff. And to me, that's like the key idea here is that you have to transcend the transaction.
Hmm.
That you can help without necessarily instantaneous financial remuneration. But again, that's where executives don't understand it. And in fact, that program was eventually killed by Hilton for that exact reason. They get a new CMO who's like, well, we're not going to spend 1 second of staff time helping people unless it generates revenue for Hilton.
Wow.
And yeah, so the people who were in charge of it all fired, program killed. It was really unfortunate, but it requires some embrace of that idea of eventually. And I get it, especially in bigger companies. Like the average tenure of a CMO now is less than 2 years.
Yeah.
And so it's almost not almost, it is harder for bigger organizations to use Youtility because they typically have so much executive led pressure to generate results right now. You can't be like, all right, we're going to start planting these seeds, and at some point in the future we're going to have a hedge, and then past that we're going to have a forest, right? Which is how you should do marketing. We all know that. But sometimes your boss won't give you that kind of rope, right? And so then you got to do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Brittany or Pablo, you got any comments on the book? Anything, any takeaways, anything you've used, anything you think like that would be a good idea to use on my campus?
Hi Jay, how are you today?
Good. Thanks for being here.
Jay, I think the book is fascinating and thought-provoking to me, especially because I work in conveying scientific project. I'm head of communication at the Vice Presidency of Research and Development. I think there are two concepts that stood out to me. One of them is market your marketing. This is really, really interesting. I think it's a big situation for communication teams. Some people in my organization, especially leadership, the leaders, believe that is enough when you, for example, produce a video, and this is enough. So you put you create your video or whatever, and you put your video in YouTube, and this is end of the story. And it's very difficult for that people to understand that you have to market this content. So this is the new battle that I have to do in the future. And the second concept is that companies have to become media organization. I think everyone in the organization have very valuable information and knowledge that is important to put in value and communicate this knowledge to people.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm sensitive to your scenario where people are like, well, the video exists, therefore the marketing is done. It's like, well, that's like if you chop a tree down in the forest and nobody's there to hear it fall, does it make a sound? It's like the same idea, right? So I think people feel like, I did a project towards the end of my consulting career for a major university, and I was working with the president. It's one of the top 5 largest universities, and he said the exact same thing. He's like, well, if we just talk about, and it was just about research, if we talk about this research project and we just make a Facebook post, well, then Facebook will show it to people. And I'm like, that's not exactly how that works, right? And then so what we said was, well, you gotta candy coat it, right? So if the research is the medicine, and some people are super interested in it, but it's probably a subset of your total audience. The way the algorithm works is you got to candy coat it, right? So you got to have research, and then let's show a picture of the mascot. Then we show research, and then we show an old timey bar that used to be on campus 30 years ago, and everybody interacts with that. And so I was trying to explain that the way the algorithm works is if you get a disproportionately successful post, then the next post, regardless of topic, will be seen by more people. And so we built this whole strategy, which was essentially one for the fans and one for him, right? So it was like, let's appeal to people, and it was mascots and old dorms and stuff like that, right? Fun stuff, and then look at all this great work we're doing, and it was strategically, I thought, spot on, and it absolutely worked algorithmically. But he's like, no, I can't do it. It's too frivolous. Like, why are we talking about old dorms? We only care about research. I'm like, well, that's fine, but nobody's going to see that post, right? So
Yes.
it can make you feel good about the purity of your communications, but no one's going to see it at all. So I don't know what to tell you. And that was one of the days when I thought, now it's time to sell the agency.
Right. I remember that example you mentioned in a podcast. You called it, and it was 3 years ago. I still remember. You said the candy vegetable approach.
Yes, candy vegetable. That was one of my strategists came up with that.
I love that. I love that.
Candy vegetable. Yep. But it still works today. In fact, arguably it works even better today because all the algorithms have been tuned even more. And now it's not even just topically candy vegetable. It's also format, right? So we still do a lot on Instagram for the tequila business, and we're always varying reel versus carousel versus image versus story. Like, we're always mixing and matching different content formats because it turns out they actually have a pretty different audience.
So reading the book, of course, you stood out, but being useful with your content. And so one of the things our admissions office did, they started a blog, and it's like, what is it like to live in Fort Valley? So I'm in Fort Valley, Georgia, a very small town in the middle of Georgia, but they started the blog, and it reminded me of we needed to do more of that so that people can see the benefit, because while there's conversation of like enrollment declining at universities, honestly, HBCUs have seen an increase. However, the smaller HBCUs are still, biting at a piece of that pie, if I can explain it that way. And so, especially in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, right? If you have Atlanta and there are 4 HBCUs there in a, major metropolitan city versus Fort Valley, which is an hour and a half away from Atlanta, not near a beach, not near anything that would just attract you to the city. Like, how can we make people see themselves here? And so that was just one of the things I just thought about that our admissions office did, but just trying to see, because I'm in University Marcom, so trying to see how can we incorporate it as well, working with HR and even getting people to come to work at the university. A lot of people commute from Atlanta, but just maybe figuring out the usefulness of the people, our content, and how we can attract employees and students. So I love the top of mind, friend of mine.
Thank you.
Frame of mind. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's actually, I went a little deeper on that concept in my most recent book, The Time to Win, about this idea of answering before they ask.
Yes.
So in your situation, right, people have a bunch of questions about living there because they've probably never been there before. Right? They're not popping through on the way somewhere else. Like, they got to go there. Fort Valley's not like on the
We're
way,
near Buc-ee's,
right?
though.
So there you go. I would legitimately create content on, what are the 14 favorite Buc-ee's items amongst your students. I think it'd be helpful.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I would totally do that. That'd be great.
Okay.
But so this idea of answer before they ask is like, if you had to sit down and make a list of like the 25 questions that people have most often about the city and the school, like, you could do it right now, Brittany. Like, Like, you know it, you just talked about it, right? But so often in all industries, but higher ed is probably as, if not more guilty than most, we don't answer those questions until somebody asks us, right? Until they call, email, live chat, show up, whatever. If they have a question, we'll gladly answer them. But if we already know they have the questions, why don't we just make the content in a bunch of formats that answers the questions proactively so they don't have to ask them? And there's a principle that Amazon uses, and it's not actually doable, but as a thought exercise, I love it. And the way they do it is they say we should never, as an organization, have to answer the same question twice. Because once we get a question, we should develop the answer, and then we should push the answer out so that anybody who has that question next time can get the answer without asking us. Now, again, that's impractical at scale, but the idea, I think, is really powerful, right? That if you're getting the same question over and over and over again, and this is true in almost every company, every organization, in every industry, there's some question that you always get. And the way I look at it is, if you keep getting the same question, whose fault is that, right? I mean, if it's that consistently confusing, just fix that, right? Just make it less confusing. In higher ed, I mean, I did a lot of higher ed website design consulting in my career, and usability. Oh my God, like, it's crazy. The number of meetings I've been in my life where somebody says, well, it's on the website. I'm like, okay, you go to the website homepage and you find it. If you can find it in 5 clicks, I will buy dinner. Can't do it. And they built the friggin' website, right? It's, no one's going to spend 2 hours spelunking through your higher ed website nav to find this one paragraph on one page that answers the question. It's insane. Happens all the time.
Yeah. I love the term you used, spelunking. It's like,
thank you. My mom's an English teacher. I come by it naturally.
Yeah. A bunch of marketers and copywriters. We should have interesting words to use, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I work in B2B marketing, and I like the part of I think it was chapter 3 where he said, listen to the zeitgeist of the industry and position your company to capitalize on the opportunity. That way you'll create a psychological bond of kinship. So what I used a lot as a tactic is webinars for our target audience, right? And I'm not just going to put out a webinar because, I have a subject matter expert on it. For example, how to show up on AI search now, because every agency does that.
Yep.
So I'm always trying to find a way to bring something a little bit different. So about a couple of months ago, the ADA Title II accessibility mandate was supposed to go into effect. So starting about 6 months ago, we did a lot of content on that to make sure that our higher ed clients are accessible and compliant. And I have a subject matter expert who could have gone on and just talk about everything they need to do, right? But then I thought about what would be more novel. So I found someone who was visually impaired who shares their screen and navigates websites via JAWS. And he intentionally put bad pages on there and bad images so the audience could see and hear what the struggles actually are, not just theoretically, but practically as well. And then as we got closer to the mandate, I had a litigation attorney that defends companies talk about ADA Title II and how they get sued after the fact, right? So those are 2 things I thought about outside the box. But I want to just ask you if that is the right approach to go about sharing that value and that information with our target audiences.
Yeah, I love that, because it's something they can't just get somewhere else. They can't just ask GPT. I love the actually being able to understand at a more powerful, persuasive level what that feels like. We used to do a lot of webinars as well, and a couple of things that we would try is provide value in a area that is not our core business, right? So of course we do occasional webinars on how to be a better marketer, but I remember clearly one of the ways that we made actually more money in the pandemic than we did before the pandemic was, like, in the first week of the pandemic, we did free webinars for all of our clients globally on how to manage a remote team, because we'd been a remote team for 10 years before the pandemic. And we did a webinar on what was the other one we did? Remote team. Oh, how to run a webinar. Like how to act, because all these folks had never done virtual events. We'd done so many of them. So we actually ended up building a side business during the pandemic to actually produce webinars for clients, because they didn't know how to do it, and we already knew how to do it, right? So None of those were really about our business, at least didn't start off that way, but they loved them. And the other thing we started to do was, because people get webinar fatigue, as you probably know, is we started this thing called Webinines. Brian may remember it. And so we would do webinars in 9 minutes. Most webinars are 5 topics, and 3 of them are good, and 2 of them are filler, because you want to make sure you use 45 minutes and then questions. And we're like, nah, we're not going to do that. We're going to do one topic. We're going to kill it, 9 minutes out. And then so people would tune in, but we'd also record them. And because webinar show up rates continue to slide, it worked out great, because people will rewatch a 9-minute recorded webinar. They're not going to watch a 60-minute webinar. Like it never happens. Like it's such a small percentage. And so that actually worked really, really well.
That is smart. So yeah, what I do is we record it as well. We put it on YouTube, but like you said, people hardly ever watch it. You see the view rate go up after I push out an email blast, then you see it. So what I like to do is I create 60-second video clips out of them and link back to the full one, but maybe I should make it even longer than that. Maybe 3-minute segments, I don't know, from a webinar like this, or even the recording for this book club, right? I'm going to chop them up and push them out after the fact as well.
Yeah, the nice thing now, I mean, this was invented after I stopped doing that kind of content. Now there's so much technology that'll do it for you, right? You just take the recording, be like, okay, make me the clips, make me the social posts. I'm like, dude, where was that when I had 3 full-time people doing that kind of stuff, right? Like,
that's right. Yeah, I'll upload this into Riverside and I'll be on.
Yeah, and they'll just do it. Like,
I
edit all our videos, the ones that we still do for Tequila on Descript, which is amazing, because it's just like in a Word doc and it's like done.
That's right. We got about 20 minutes left, everybody. Please ask your questions to Jay. He's happy to answer them.
Yeah, I'll jump into the Taxi Mike example and the importance of like local knowledge and things like that. And in higher ed, we have so many people on campus, and a lot of them are interested in becoming better creators and doing more social and becoming more visible as part of their careers or as part of their student experience. And when you talk about answering questions and putting that knowledge out there, who better to answer a question for students than other students? Totally. Why do you think universities just aren't doing these things? I mean, it seems like the perfect thing.
I mean, there's some examples of good student blogs and student TikTok accounts and things like that. But it usually starts off as like a campaign. And then it just sort of runs out of steam, right? They do it for a semester and then it's gassed, right? And I don't know. I think probably you got to get students who are willing to create the content, right? And there's got to be a reason for them to do that. And so maybe you run out of volunteers at some level. But I think typically what happens, in my experience, having looked at it, is eventually it starts off as, let's just address this organically, right? Let's speak to students where they are, with mouthpieces they trust about topics they care about. And then pretty soon that organic nature of it gets set aside. It's like, okay, now what strategically are the questions that we need to do? Let's make sure we say it exactly the right way. And it gets overmanaged. And when it gets overmanaged, it gets underviewed. And they're like, well, this sucks. Nobody looks at it anymore. So they don't look at it anymore because you sucked all the spontaneity out of it. If you just would have left it alone, it would have been fine. But that's what I've seen firsthand, is that people want to now turn it into like an official thing. And that then makes it the exact opposite of what works.
I'd just like to piggyback off the answer. In my role, I find it really difficult to connect with students because there's such a barrier between me and a student. I usually have to, in some college meeting, I want to like make up sheriff badges that say Hale College Marketing and hand them out to all the faculty and staff and make them stand up and raise their right hand and go through some sort of a faux process to swear them in as deputy marketers. Because, if you look at it from the org chart level, I've got deans, and then I've got chairs, then I got faculty, and then I have students. And it's hard enough for me to get like connected to students and to be, to have that as a resource for like Brittany and some of these others that are in like university Marcom, which like they report to the VP, and then the VP. I mean, I don't even know how you would be able to source all that. Like you'd have to, like your full-time job would be going around to faculty and asking them to provide you with students and things to be able to, just the talent perspective.
Yeah, we did a bunch of projects on this that were intentionally short term, but it was during COVID. So we worked with 5 or 6 universities, and then also a couple of smaller national governments. When you may remember it, like the COVID kind of detector app was out, and it was used Bluetooth, and so it would know, like if your phone was next to somebody else's phone, it would remember that, and then if you declared that you had COVID, it would know which phones were near your phone. It would notify you that, hey, you were near somebody who had COVID, which all seems really crazy now, but that's how it worked. But that only happens if people download the app, right? So if you don't have the app, none of it works, right? So we were hired many times to convince students to get the app, and so we did it almost entirely with students. But instead of going through administration and then faculty and whatever for them to recommend students, we literally reverse engineered it and said, okay, let's use some software. I forget which one we use. We use multiple ones, but let's just find out which students who are on this campus have the highest social graph. And we literally found the 300 students with the most followers and the most engagement. And then we reached out to them directly and said, hey, we really need you to do this on behalf of the campus if you want to, and we'll make it worth your while. And here's some talking points, and go. And it actually worked out great.
Nice.
It was a lot of work though. We put a lot of sweat equity into it because it was all hand-to-hand combat, right? It's finding the students, reaching out to the students, explaining it to the students, monitoring their posts, tracking it. It was a ton of work. We put a lot of people on it. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars each school to run this program, but it really worked.
Awesome.
Jay, I have a question about how to transform institutions, companies in media organization. Should the communication department build capacities across the entire organization to teach staff how to communicate, or is this a task for an external agency? And in depth should that work be?
That is the eternal higher ed marketer question. Should we have centralized marketing, and then individual units can tap into central marketing? Should we have centralized marketing and then parallel marketers at the unit level? And if so, how do they work together? Should we have centralized marketing with one agency of record that kind of umbrellas the whole university? And or do we let units have their own agency for the business school, for the science side of it, for athletics, for whatever? I don't know, and I've spent a lot of time in the middle of those fights and helping solve those fights. I don't think there's a right answer. My conclusion has been that it is so driven by the fabric of that institution and the culture of that institution, and frankly, the strength or weakness of the centralized administration and the trust that units have or don't have in the centralized administration, that I don't think there is a right answer. I think there's probably an answer that is defensively more efficient, but it doesn't matter. Higher ed is so unique in that it doesn't matter if it's more efficient if people don't actually do it. And so you can persuade and cajole in higher ed, but it's very difficult to get people to do marketing at bayonet point. And in a corporate environment, we always had an interesting agency, right? Because we did probably a third higher ed and 2/3, very large enterprise corporate. And it's so different because in corporate, we're like, yeah, Jay's team says this is how we're doing it. So, okay, dudes, this is how we're doing it, right? And if you don't like it, you can go work somewhere else, right? In higher ed, it's not a force, right? It's a persuade in most cases, just the way it works culturally. And so I always felt like having at least some outside agency perspective, at least strategically, is useful because you can definitely get into your higher ed bubble, right? The good thing about higher ed is that they tend to learn from each other, but that's also the bad thing, right? And at some point, a lot of the marketing starts to look the same because it's sort of keeping their own counsel. So having a third-party agency who can inject new ideas, I think is useful, at least at the strategy level. But it can also get really expensive when everybody is bringing their own agency to the meeting, right? So you've got centralized marketing and then marketers in every unit, and each of those marketers have their own agencies. And all of a sudden you're like, how much are we spending on marketing? It's like back in the day when we used to do audits and we'd say, oh, this university has 314 Facebook pages. It's like, that's probably not good.
Yeah, for sure. So I like the example you gave for Brittany to have a piece of content on the 14 best or most liked foods at Buc-ee's. Now, there's a written piece there. Would you suggest them going actually into Buc-ee's and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because kids don't read, right? Like kids don't read, they watch, and there's nothing you can do about that, right? Parents read, but kids don't read. So yeah, I think you'd have to do it as a TikTok, and hopefully Buc-ee's wouldn't kick you out. I wouldn't even ask them to do it.
Well, and that's twofold, because the other part of it is we're trying to get merch to be sold in Buc-ee's, but they're saying we have to have a demand, and so that just hit.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Jay. I should probably pay you for that.
That's all right. That one's great. Yeah, that's so funny, right? Yeah, we'll sell it if we have demand. Well, how can we have demand if we don't have any?
Right.
And
sort of a circular logic situation here.
I said, how? And then they said people need to go in the store and say that they want it. And I said, there's no way to track that. I can send 100 people today and you can say no one came in.
Yeah, but you could come up with some sort of in-store QR code, right? Shoot this code if you want merch, or text this number, if you want merch. So you could come up with a way to track it.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to think of, because at first it was just like, go talk to the manager, but it's different managers, it's different times of the day.
But you could also be like, hey, not necessarily do it in the store, because it is a little bit ridiculous, but you could do a TikTok and an Instagram reel, which is, okay, here we are at Buc-ee's. They have amazing things here. The one thing they don't have is our merch. That's crazy. If you want our merch at Buc-ee's, comment on this post.
Nice.
Okay.
And then you end up with like 1,400 comments, and then you just walk that post over to Buc-ee's, like, bro, here you go.
See this. Yeah.
Your evidence.
Yeah.
Oh, so we can tie it into the 14 things we like, and then say what's missing. Vote Valley.
The 15th thing would be
But okay. Yeah, I really owe you, Jay. Thank you.
Right. So. No now that I don't get to do consulting or speaking, I miss this is the part I miss. I don't miss the travel.
Yeah.
But I miss we still have a lot of tequila brand clients, but it is that's a situation where we're answering the same questions all the time, right? So the part that I miss about my previous job is answering different questions all the time.
So I got one last question for you, Jay.
Yeah, you bet.
If you were writing Youtility 2.0 today, what's the chapter that you're most excited to add?
I'll give you two. One would be how to be useful in an era where all information is at a fingertip, right? So when I wrote the book, we only had Google, and Google was not nearly as good then as it is now. Now with AI, how do you become a resource that is more useful than ChatGPT? I think is a really important question to consider. And that would be a big part of it for sure. Because otherwise people are just going to go to that as their default answer. So that'd be a part of it. And the second part of it that I talk more about, because we've come a long way, is measurement, right? Is how to tie utility measurement using technology primarily back to what executives need in order to support these kind of programs. Yeah. So I'd definitely have a chapter on AI typically means average information. And so how can you be better than that? And then also how to make sure that your boss approves this.
Yeah, absolutely. And now for people listening in, or if anybody on this group would like to connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's jay@tequilareport.com.
Awesome. We'll be in touch.
Come say hi. Free newsletter, no cost, twice a week. We'll tell you all about tequila.
Well, Jay, on behalf of the book club and the people that weren't able to make it, I thank you so much for being a part of it. I mean, such a wealth of knowledge and great insights shared today.
Thanks. I really appreciate you putting it together.
You bet. All right, everybody. See you next time. All right.
See you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks a lot.
you.
Great, man.
Great seeing you, Jay.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Brian.
See you.
And that's a wrap for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Education Marketing Leader Podcast this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with your friends and your network. And if you ever thought about starting your own podcast, now that you listen to one and you got inspired, reach out to me via DM. We'd love to help you launch your own. We'll take care of everything for you, the scripting, the strategy, the editing, the distribution. All you have to do is show up, connect with your audience, and build your personal brand. So if you're ready for it, let's chat. And for everybody else, we'll see you next time at the Education Marketing Leader Podcast. Take care, friends.